Hello everybody, welcome to Raising Vibrations. New assignment today, and we're going to do a chart of the day, and this is for the 28th, 29th of May 2019, and we are going to be having a new moon that's happening in Gemini on the 3rd of June, so that's something to look forward to as well in terms of energies. And I felt that this would be a great opportunity to speak to the astrology at the moment and kind of emphasize some of my own personal thoughts around, what the astrology suggests to us as individuals and maybe as what it means for us as a collective. So I chose this image today to really illustrate a point that I want to emphasize using the astrology and the archetypes, and something that I think is a very healthy view that you can integrate into yourself on your own personal path of spiritual awakening, or at least the realization of a spiritual path that you've come to experience in this lifetime, to witness, to understand, in that sense. So this location is actually a place called Machu Picchu, and it's situated in Peru. And it's one of the things that I like about this is that it talks about a civilization, okay, and it speaks to the construct of a civilization that was once sort of occupying this world. And the location of it, to me, also I find really interesting. And this is not specific to their own personal civilization itself, but to the context of today's conversation, which is the height, right? The location of this specific building structure situated in the mountains, and the parallels that I want to draw from this imagery over here and the astrology chart. Is what I really want to attempt today. But this picture really reminds me of something very profound. And so I want to go to the charts and just kind of share with you what that actually looks like. And let's just look at that over there. Okay. So you're looking at Pluto over here in Capricorn at 22 degrees. You've got Saturn also in the proximity of Pluto and Capricorn, or in the sign of Capricorn in the South Node. And we know for many different astrology points of views and perspectives, that this constitutes or forms the basic overall structure of our, everyday reality. And in a very simple term, or a simple construction of imagery that I can provide you with, this is the framework that holds your sense of self and identity together. And it is also, by extension, the way that the collective's identity is held together. And so Capricorn and all these symbols moving through the sign reveals to us very briefly that we are clearly in a time in which the structure that holds our sense of self together is, we've spoken about this in previous new and full moons and astrology videos, that structure is, no longer supportive for where the energy is today, where our sense of purpose and meaning within a civilization, or within a individual civilization. This can be your own civilization. This is what I wanted to point to, was your own personal civilization, seeing your life as a construct of, the manifestation of all of your gifts and talents and creative ideas, and the ability to actually navigate your body, your vessel, as if you were running a civilization. You were the god of that civilization. And so naturally speaking, we go through cycles in life, and those cycles bring us to heights of, peak experiences, and then sort of descends into where those structures and that form you know, dissolves or crumbles, just like with this picture in the background. You can see that the imagery is speaking to what was once a civilization of interaction, and existence was there, spirit was there, and now what you're interacting with is the ruins of what was once a form that held a collective identity. And the way that you're able to actually understand the collective identity is because, well, firstly, it has a name, and you're made relatable through the ego structure that they have, right? And so this is what the North Node, or in Cancer, is all about. And the archetype of Cancer Capricorn is the nature of how a society is structured, according to its sort of religious beliefs or cosmology, the context of its laws, and then the communities that exist within it, right? And the people's interaction with that. And of course, this is what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with the entire structural nature of everybody's independent civilization, and by extension then the collectives, under a reform. So there's old labels that no longer work for us, and there's laws that we've had established in the past that no longer support growth, and so we're breaking those down, and we're pioneering experiences in new directions, and trying to understand where the boundaries are around what is safe and what is not safe. And we're under a very profound time in human evolution at the moment, and we are witnessing one of those periods in which the peak experience of civilization, at least from the Western perspective, or the Western civilization, it's run a course, and that cycle is completing itself. And so naturally speaking, we're in a cycle of not necessarily descending, okay, because that can be debated depending on how you perceive things, but I would point across that the nature of descending in this context is the collapsing of pre-existing structures, which we know, and I've said about this before, and myself and Jen have spoken about it, and you can see it in your own life. These pre-existing structures leading to a reformation of what is true for you, and what is your purpose and meaning in life. And I think there are different pockets of different categories of people that are in different experiences or stages within this process. And there are some people that are in a phase in which they're just beginning to deconstruct their reality and realize that there are a lot of belief systems. And so let me draw the attention to the moon connecting to the Neptune here, and the moon squaring the Jupiter retrograde in Sagittarius. Okay, so held within a culture, held within a society, held within a civilization, is an embedded, set of instructions, myth, right? That everybody, to a certain degree, accepts at a subconscious level, and that becomes the interweaving fabric and framework for that civilization, or that structural society, or that your own individual personal sort of land. So we have an individual philosophy and perspective, and this can be seen as somebody that's very left or in their political views, or very right in their political views, or has a spiritual perspective on life, or has a atheist perspective on life. It swings between two spectrums ultimately, and depending on the structure of your own personal astrology chart, and the tendency to move towards the more logical aspect or the more abstract aspect will really suggest where you exist within the collective's truths, and how well you gel with them and interact with them and find integration, or how you find yourself isolated or not necessarily feeling like as if you can actually integrate into the societal myths that are truths. And there, like as an example, when we're talking about a long time ago, we would have like gender role assignments, okay? And so the masculinity of the man was represented in a cultural form as if you went out and you gathered some food, and then you came back, and because of your masculinity, this was sort of defined as a cultural ideology as success. So success. And so this would be what young boys would then grow into within the culture, and they would be guided through the cultural philosophers that this is the right way to be, and so you would mold into that, and so your sense of self would be aligned with that, and these belief systems would be embedded within your psychology. And so the same thing happens for women as well in the different context, and so these unconscious myths of gender role assignments, as an example in this explanation, will reflect a passage of life that somebody will live. And if you don't question them, you're pretty much running in accordance with a sense of self that is created for you based on the cultural ideals and ideologies and beliefs, and who has the dominance of power in regards to governing, and the instructions of how those governing sort of rules are put in place. And so when you're looking at the symbols today, and you're observing this Neptune moon contact, and the moon's going to touch Chiron probably by the time that most of you watch this video, and you can see that moon is squaring the Jupiter in Sag, as I've pointed out, in retrograde. And the sun is going to make an opposition to Jupiter after the new moon, which we'll talk about in the new moon video, so in Gemini. And they're going to progressively then begin to square. The sun is going to square this Neptune in Pisces. And so the fabric of cultural ideals and ideologies and perspectives and visions of what is essential and what is not is rooted in the signs of Sagittarius, Pisces, and Gemini, because essentially Gemini forms the communication or the dialogue that is in alignment with the truths that are sort of set out at the deep philosophical undertones of the culture. What are the ground or the framework of the cosmology? And certain cultures can have a certain cosmology, and another culture can have a different cosmology, and ultimately those cosmologies are manifested into reality through the points of views and perspectives and experiences that are collectively shared by people that are in power. And so this power dynamic is again associated with Capricorn within the context of the who has power in society, Capricorn being the framework, and then those belief systems that are held in it. And so these symbols over here with the squares that are taking place, and again Jupiter's retrograde, and so when the sun does actually connect to Jupiter, it will also, in a sense, have a very profound illumination as to what Jupiter retrograde in Sagittarius represents. And this image to me just speaks so profoundly to the current squares that are happening between Gemini and Pisces and Sagittarius, or Jupiter, Neptune, and the Sun. And it speaks to, firstly, a very, very big realization of an old structure that holds the civilization in play is forming a closing cycle. So it's like closing in on itself. And so we're all feeling these shifts right now, things feeling outdated. You can't sort of disregard things that you seem to find very apparent and clear. As an example, the truth of things is out there, and you notice yourself shifting and changing in accordance with how your own personal views are relating to this pre-existing structure of society. And you'll notice that the way that you can actually compare your own views to the pre-existing structure of society is that they feel outdated. The societal structures feel outdated. And so there's a kind of progressive necessity in your own consciousness to notice this difference between yourself and then how the old structures have been, or the old paradigms have really they no longer work anymore. Okay, So that's very apparent. And then, as a natural function of a society that is embedded in the ideals and ideologies and influences of the past generations, well, then naturally speaking, people that are born after the fact, so 2 generations onwards, are going to have a different sort of undertaking on the pre-existing structures of society. And so naturally speaking, societal structures and the context of how a civilization evolves is in alignment with these ever-changing generational influences. So let's be more specific in this sense. One of the reasons why I'm sharing this is because I'm busy doing an intense amount of research into threading together all of the generations and how they're enacting and impacting the way that this kind of collective change is occurring for us. And so the Pluto and Sagittariuses that are born between 1995 and 2008, most of them that are roughly 2000s, okay, are you know who you are, because if you're watching this video, you're coming into the world and you're starting to become conscious of reality in a way that is different from when you were a kid and sort of running around in a kind of blissful state. And you're observing something and you're like, wow, this is really weird. Why are these things like this? And so, as an example, the girl that's from Sweden, Greta, that's supporting and advocating the necessity for looking at climate change as a real thing. This would be what I'm talking about. And so, as a result, what's occurring in her actions is a ripple effect within the collective to observe the behavior and structures that are held in place from pre-existing generations, and looking at how that is no longer working for us. And so this is how this shift is occurring at one level. And there are, of course, many, many different things. It includes your own personal choices and decisions that you make to shift your own perspective and how that occurs. So again, we're dealing with this Pisces energy, Neptune and Pisces, consistently suggesting to us that this closing cycle is occurring for us and sort of chaos is emerging and nature is coming through into our reality, and it's essentially consuming everything that is no longer and reinvigorating everything that needs to grow. And that's the polarity, or the other side to this, is that Chiron and Aries suggests to us that the healing process that is occurring for us is that we're taking a new turn. And so the integration within our collective at this point in time is assimilating new experiences into and interweaving new experiences into the fabric of our reality, that when they will eventually begin to reshape and lay the foundations for a new civilization, a new structure of views on life. And what's really interesting as I observe the world at the moment is that the nature of how we're moving through this, especially now with Uranus being in Taurus at the moment, is what types of values do you interact with, and how do those values then become a supporting mechanism for validating your perspective of reality. And then that then becomes the overarching guidance that you use to navigate yourself in the chaos that is in this world at the moment. And naturally speaking, when you find yourself navigating with people that are on the same fractal or the same sort of value structure, you'll see kindred spirits that will validate your views and things. And so by default, you find yourself actually then, becoming assigned with a group identity. And so there's a huge thing that's kind of manifesting itself with a lot of the energy at the moment is coming into contact with an investigation. And this is my own personal observation and something that I think is very critical to all of us, right now, and definitely a way of actually embodying the energy at the moment. And that is that, and this is also the video, or not the video, but the picture that I've brought up over here, is that during a time in which there is such uncertainty around what is potentially real and what is ideologies and sort of mass hysteria, what is information that can be beneficial to you and what information is just information, and how do you navigate your way and through this kind of storm, as it were, as we go through the essential ending of a cycle of our civilization, and then progressively moving into a state of reality in which the reorganization of that and the reforming of that new civilization will start to manifest. And the period right now with the astrology suggests that you first need to get in contact with what is your North Star, okay? And that becomes the guiding mechanism for your life at the moment. And so the question then becomes, well, how do you actually understand your North Star, and what is the North Star, and why do you need to do that? And because the North Star is a point that allows you to aim at something that you can consistently navigate towards, that will, over a period of time, bring you into the highest, or let's say the most. Firstly, it gives you meaning during this time, which is, I think, really crucial. And secondly, it provides you with a aspiration, a way of looking at life that's not drowning in the noise, but actually being able to expand and open yourself up to purpose and creativity that exists and that is latent in you. And so Capricorn is the North Star, and it speaks to the highest point in the navigation and the captain of your own ship. And I think as a collective, when we start to awaken to these very, very deeply dormant fabrics of our psyche, and we start illuminating them, and we start waking them up, and we start bringing attention to them, and we're giving them life, as it were, I think that this is where people will start to not only align themselves with meaning that will alleviate a lot of the uncertainty and chaos, and what am I supposed to be doing with my life, and maybe even to the point of like cycles of depression and meaninglessness, but also at the same time actually stepping into a state of power that's really, really invigorating and influential. And the way that you and so part of the Uranus and Taurus, and this is the picture I want to speak to, is that build your civilization on the highest principles that you can uphold about yourself. Establish a structural reality that is rooted in the best version of yourself, and to ask yourself every single day, what is that best version, and how can you attain that through aiming to the North Star. And not every single day is going to be like that, and not every single day you should wake up and tell yourself that that's needing to be the case. But if you can interweave into the fabric of your activity, as in day-to-day routine, that you will strive for at least one thing that you're going to do with the best capacity that you have, and practice that, then I think that you're contributing a lot to your life at the moment. And I think that this is one of the beauties of the current state of reality right now for us, is that yes, there is uncertainty and chaos and madness and a lot of things that are really, really scary, but there's also another part of the reality in which the potential to actually live a life that can really be meaningful in such a profound way is available to us. And so stepping into that and being guided by that philosophical view can be very impactful and very profound. And I suppose that probably one of the things that I want to bring my own personality into this conversation today is the capacity to really begin to look at the value structure that you have in your life and ask yourself the question, do you consider that the choices that you make every day bring you the value that you know you inherently have? And if you say to yourself, no, sometimes I don't do that, then the response is, okay, well, I'm not good enough. It's okay, well, I know that I have a target. I know that I have a North Star. I know that is there. I don't need to have that figured out. But what I can do is I can choose to interact with something, and when I'm consciously aware of the opportunity to do it, I will bring the highest version of myself to it and see what happens and see how it interacts with me, and how I interact with it. And can I try to do that again the next day with a little bit more? And so it becomes a progressive, slow, day by day behavior pattern, more than a kind of achievement that you're trying to get to, that if you fail, you reinforce to yourself your inferiority, as it were, just as a very subtle kind of thing there. And this is what this energy speaks to me. It's interweaving into the fabric of our reality a spiritual ideal that is rooted in aspiration of purpose, the realization of self, the deep understanding that life is here to be digested and experienced, and to be taken in, and then to be shared. And number 5, in some sense, live the best version of your life that you can live, and the ability to give yourself that opportunity in that sense. And so that would be kind of the inspiration or the suggestion that this astrology chart brings with me today, because it's like that. It's like everything that is manifested in reality comes from a primordial source. And if we can not fix the manifestation, but if we can connect with the primordial source, and then from there incarnate ourselves with a state that encompasses these qualities that I've shared with you, then what naturally becomes manifest is a reality that has these principal values rooted in them. And so, but as a default, whatever it is that becomes manifested in that structured reality is a reflection of those things. And it's an amazing thing, and it just kind of holds standards of living or experiences for our lives in ways that are very supportive to the nurturing of our own experience of life, and to support each other in that way. Okay. All right, so everybody, I really hope that this kind of chart of the day provided with a sense of conversation or meaning, or brought you anything to it. It's my interpretation of what the energy manifests itself as, the archetypes, and what they speak to, and how they become literate in some sense. So yeah. All right, so everybody, have a wonderful day, and I'll see you soon with the new moon in Gemini. Actually, I actually forgot completely. So can I have your attention quickly for 1 second? I just want to let everybody know that Raising Vibrations is on Patreon, and there's loads of things that I do on Patreon over here. And I just wanted to sort of let everybody know that if you don't know about Patreon, I encourage you to go check out our Patreon page. And also that this video is sort of, in some sense, supported by our patrons. So I'd like to say thank you so much to all of the patrons that are part of us. And if you're considering this, or you've considered it in the past, come check it out and see if there's something that you're really interested in. Okay? All right, peeps. Thanks very much for your time. I appreciate it. Take care. Bye-bye.